Have you ever wondered what makes a lemon so sour or baking soda so, bitter? Well, it's all about some pretty basic chemistry. Today, we're going to dive deep into the world of acids and bases, and we'll use some classic puzzles from our source material to really guide us through it all. Okay, so let's start with something you might know all too well. We've all been there, right? A little too much to eat, and then boom, acidity. This question really gets to the heart of what acids and bases do every single day. So what do you reach for? Something acidic like lemon juice? Or something else? To figure that out, you've really got to understand how these things cancel each other out. So to get to the bottom of this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to play chemical detective. Then we'll check out the reaction files. After that, we'll uncover the secret that's hiding in the solution. And finally, we'll look at the awesome power of pH. All right, first up, let's get our detective hats on. Our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to figure out what these mystery substances are. And, a very important rule in chemistry, we do this without tasting them, of course. So here's our first case, and it's a real classic. You've got 3 test tubes. They all look exactly the same, clear liquid. One's an acid, one's a base, and one's just plain old distilled water. The catch? You only have a single piece of red litmus paper. So, what's your first move? Where do you even begin? Okay, so check out the logic here. It's pretty clever. First step, you dip that red litmus paper into each of the 3 solutions. Simple enough. The one that turns it blue, bam, that's your base. But here's the really brilliant part. You don't grab a new piece of paper. You take that same paper, which is now blue, and you use it to test the other 2 liquids. The one that turns it back to red, well, that has to be the acid, which means, by process of elimination, the last one left is just neutral distilled water. Case closed. So that little piece of litmus paper, that's what chemists call an indicator. And it's basically the most important tool in our detective kit. I like to think of them as chemical secret agents. They go undercover into a solution and change their appearance to tell you exactly what's going on. But get this, it's not always about color. Some indicators are all about smell. They're called, kind of a fancy name, olfactory indicators. Think about onions, vanilla, or clove oil. These things actually change their smell depending on whether they're in an acid or a base. So with an onion, for instance, you can smell it just fine in an acid, but add a base and poof, the smell can totally disappear. How cool is that? All right, detectives, time to open up the next file, the reaction files. We've identified our suspects. Now let's see what happens when they actually start to, react. This is where things really start to get interesting. So here's a big question for you. What gas do you usually get when an acid reacts with a metal? I mean, maybe you've seen this in a science class or a movie. Someone drops a piece of metal into acid and it starts fizzing like crazy. What exactly is in those bubbles? And this setup right here shows the classic experiment to find out. You take some zinc granules, drop them in some dilute sulfuric acid, and sure enough, you get bubbles. But here's the test. You carefully collect that gas and bring a flame near it, and you get this little pop sound. That pop is the unmistakable signature of hydrogen gas. It's like its calling card. So the big takeaway, the thing to really lock in your brain, is this super important rule. Acid plus a metal always gives you a salt plus hydrogen gas. And this isn't just some random one-off thing. Nope, this is a fundamental rule of chemistry. And you know what? A very similar rule helps us solve another puzzle. What happens when an acid hits something like chalk or limestone or even an eggshell? Well, chemists call those things metal carbonates. And you guessed it, you get more fizzing. That fizz is called effervescence. But this time, the gas coming off isn't hydrogen, it's carbon dioxide. And this brings us right back to where we started, that indigestion problem. See, that feeling of acidity is from too much acid in your stomach. So to fix it, you need a base, something like a baking soda solution. The base goes in and neutralizes the acid. They react to produce harmless salt and water and relief. That right there is a neutralization reaction in action. Okay, we've seen what acids and bases do. We know they react, they neutralize, they change colors. But now for the big reveal, why? What's the secret? What's going on under the hood that gives them all these special powers? This next question really gets to the core of the mystery. Why does an acid solution conduct electricity when a sugar solution, like glucose, or an alcohol solution doesn't? I mean, think about it. Both hydrochloric acid and glucose have hydrogen in them. So why does only one of them act like an acid and let electricity flow through? The answer is staring us right in the face in this experiment. Look at that glowing bulb. That's proof positive that electricity is flowing right through the acid solution. Now, if you were to swap that out for a glucose solution, that bulb would go completely dark. See, for electricity to flow through a liquid, it needs little charged particles to carry the current. And it turns out only the acid solution has them. And this little comparison table gives us our biggest clue. Check this out. If you take dry hydrogen chloride gas, it does absolutely nothing to dry litmus paper. Nothing. But the second you dissolve that same gas in water, boom, it instantly turns into an acid and changes the litmus paper's color. So the chemical is the same. The only thing that changed was the water. Water is the secret ingredient. And here it is, the big secret. When you put an acid in water, it breaks apart, the fancy word is dissociates, and it releases these positively charged hydrogen ions, or H+ ions. Bases do pretty much the same thing, but they release negatively charged hydroxide ions, OH-. These ions, these tiny charged particles swimming around in the water, are the reason for everything we've seen. They're what carry the electricity. They're what change the indicators. They're the source of all the acidic and basic properties. Now, a really, really important safety note here. Because this whole process of dissolving an acid releases a ton of heat, you have to be super careful. The rule is, always add the acid slowly to the water. Never pour water into a concentrated acid. If you do it the wrong way, the heat can build up so fast that it boils the water instantly and splashes dangerous acid everywhere. It's a simple rule, but it can literally save you from serious burns. Okay, so we've cracked the chemical code. We know the secret is all about these little ions. So for our final section, let's look at the power of pH and see how this chemistry has a massive impact on pretty much everything in our world. Now, to make sense of all this, scientists came up with a handy little tool called the pH scale. It's just a simple scale from 0 to 14, and what it's really measuring is the concentration of those hydrogen ions we were just talking about. The lower the number, the more acidic it is. The higher the number, the more basic or alkaline. And right in the middle, at 7, that's perfectly neutral. Think pure water. So why should you care about this pH scale? Well, it matters a lot. As you can see here, life itself is this incredibly delicate pH balancing act. Our own bodies have to stay in a super narrow pH range to function. Acid rain can devastate forests and lakes. The soil needs the right pH for plants to grow. Even our own stomachs use a super strong acid to digest food. Get the pH wrong and everything can fall apart. Okay, so we've gone from a simple case of indigestion all the way to the secret of ions. Let's wrap things up with a really big cosmic question. The atmosphere on the planet Venus is full of thick clouds of sulfuric acid. So, knowing everything we now know about pH and how critical it is for life, what do you think? Could life exist on a planet like that? That extreme acidity is for sure a huge, huge problem for life as we know it. And there you have it. We started with a simple question about what to do for an upset stomach, and we ended up talking about the atmosphere of other planets. It just goes to show you, understanding these basic properties of acids and bases really does help explain the world around us. It's a beautiful example of how these fundamental chemistry rules connect everything, from the tiniest little ion all the way up to the largest planets in our solar system.